Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome once again to Change the Questions, the show where we take a question each episode and dissect it thoroughly. My name is Paul Laporte, and joining me, as always, is my co-host Mike Miner. And we also have a special guest host today. Miner, we still are doing an audio. You need to say things. You can't just point to yourself. Say words, Miner. God damn it, this is a talkie.
What? We talk?
Yes, we talk. We talk.
I thought it was another.
Right.
Yesterday, I was like, oh god, here we go again.
And joining myself and Mr. Miner is a Change the Questions contributor and YouTube personality, Mr. Antoine Clay, a.k.a. Sean the Gamer. Thank you so much for joining us.
What up, everybody? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being on. And today we are going to be discussing the Montreal Screwjob. Was it justified? Now, for those of you who have been living under a rock or maybe were born after 1997, the Montreal Screwjob, of course, between Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels at Survivor Series 1997, taking place in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Bret Hart did not want to lose the title to Shawn Michaels in his home country. Bret Hart was going to be leaving for WCW. He was going to drop it the next night to Shawn Michaels, but Vince McMahon didn't trust him to do the right thing, so instead of waiting for that, he decided to just have the title switch hands after Shawn Michaels put Bret Hart in a sharpshooter, to which Bret Hart did not submit. Vince McMahon came out, called for the bell, and handed off the title to Shawn Michaels. Miner, I see you making weird hand gestures.
Yeah, I'm making weird hand gestures, not unlike Randy Savage.
Just doing the hand jive over here.
Yeah.
Yeah! Anyway, let's clarify something quick. Bret Hart did state that he would drop it to anybody else but Shawn Michaels.
Right, that night.
That night.
And then he said that he would drop it to Shawn, but he would do so, I think, the
night.
next night on Raw. Right, exactly.
He said because Shawn wouldn't give him the satisfaction of actually returning the favor of jobbing to Bret Hart at WrestleMania.
Right.
Or actually, Shawn Michaels pinned Bret Hart at WrestleMania, but Shawn wasn't going to return the receipt. So that's where the whole dispute came into play.
Right. Now, obviously, Bret Hart was very upset with this, basically called Vince McMahon untrustworthy, called him a snake, and Vince McMahon, of course, came out the next night on Raw with the famous Bret Screwed Bret speech, which was really the genesis of the Vince McMahon character, but we're not talking about the Mr. McMahon character, we're talking about whether or not this was actually the right thing to do. Antoine, we'll start with you.
As a business standpoint, I think it was, just because if you didn't think that the guy was going to do the right thing the next night on Raw, or maybe once he found out that Bret didn't want to do it, he was like, maybe we can create this controversy by doing it like this. So as a business standpoint, I can see why he did it. On a personal, professional level, it's kind of shady, but you got to do what you got to do when it comes to your company and protecting your belt and your brand. So.
And Mr. Miner?
You know, honestly, I don't know if I could say it much better. Vince McMahon, it's his company, seeing what happened with Medusa not too far before, dumping the women's championship, a championship that was basically unused anyway, into the trash on live television on the competition show. I can see why.
Risk that again.
Yeah, I can see why Vince would get a bit paranoid about his main championship, his world championship, possibly being taken over to the competition show and dumped at the trash. I can see why he would be concerned about that. That being said, he had a employee who didn't want to go and leave the company, no matter how much he was paid. But as far as a smart business decision, I can see why Vince did it. I can see why Bret was severely pissed off. I can see both sides of it. But as far as a sound business decision, yes, it is a sound business decision because you do not want the shining jewel of your company to get taken, brought onto the competition program, and then literally thrown into the trash.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, here's the thing, though. I mean, this is Bret Hart we're talking about here. This guy is one of those old school dyed-in-the-wool guys who he lives and dies by his reputation. He never, up until that point, the contract negotiation between him and WWE wasn't particularly spiteful. It wasn't anything that was really, that there was no bad blood that was really being built up. So I just kind of feel like Vince McMahon did it. I almost feel like he did it more as a message of do what I say and don't screw with me, or I'll make you look bad, or I'll get in my way anyways. I feel like it was more of a power play than something that was, best for business and something that he felt he had to do.
Well, do you think I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
No, it's okay.
Do you think that maybe the drama between Brett and Sean also made a big part in that? Played a big part in that?
I mean, I think it absolutely had something to do. Well, the thing is that absolutely had something to do with Brett not wanting to do the job and whatnot. And, like them saying, like, he doesn't want a job in his home country. I mean, that's like saying Sean doesn't want to lose the title anywhere in the United States. I mean, Quebec is, if you've ever been to Canada, Quebec is not exactly Calgary, which is where he's from. It's nowhere really that close, and it's a completely different environment. And it's not like, it's this big thing for him to lose it there. I just that it contributed to that, but I don't necessarily think. I don't know if Sean got in. I don't think Sean got in Vince's ear and was like, "Oh, you should do this. You have to do this now." I think it was more like Minor mentioned, and like you mentioned, Antoine, him being paranoid. The Medusa thing could have definitely contributed to that. But what? I just don't think Brett wasn't going to be that guy.
And also, one of the things that was said to Vince was by Triple H. He said, if he doesn't want to do business, we'll do business for him.
Right.
So that definitely contributed to that decision, to keep that championship there through shady means. As far as a guy like Bret Hart, always loyal, never gave a problem. I think maybe he said he missed 2 days out of his, 18-year career there. 18, I don't know. Either way, he was there for a very long time.
He was a team player.
Yeah, and Shawn Michaels was, the guy that went out and partied. And
now, I could have seen for sure Shawn Michaels pulling something if he was the one going to WCW. That's a no-brainer. But Bret Hart, just this guy who's built up on integrity, not only on integrity and whatnot, but he also has family in the company. If he bails in a bad way, then he fucks over his entire family that works there.
And
so he just wasn't going to do that. Yeah,
think about it. That's the guy that was screwed over. Shawn Michaels is the guy that caused problems. He went out and partied all the time. Drug problems. I mean, and Bret Hart's the one that basically kept his nose clean and worked his ass off. And he's the guy that gets...
And that's how they pay him, yeah.
Yeah, that's how they pay him back. So, I don't know. Was it justified?
All right, well, let's go ahead and put ourselves in the role of Vince McMahon. Antoine, if you're Vince McMahon and you have that decision to make, do you make it that way?
Probably not on the pay-per-view. Maybe on the pay-per-view, just because if it actually was the Monday after or that pay-per-view, Brett's last show.
Okay, I believe... I think that officially Survivor Series was the end of his contract, but Brett agreed to basically extend it one day and then drop it the next night. I think that was the way it went, and I could be wrong on that, and if you're listening to this and you want to correct me on that, feel free to, but I believe contractually Survivor Series was his final night, and then he was willing to...
If it's the last day is Sunday Survivor Series, and you may show up on Monday, and I'm not sure if you're going to drop the belt, then I'm going to have to do what I have to do to keep my belt in the company.
Okay.
And you know what's funny about this whole thing is a situation that happened probably a year later with Jeff Jarrett, maybe a year or two later with Jeff Jarrett, where I guess he held Vince up for money for the IC championship, dropping it to China a couple of years later.
Yeah.
And he didn't learn anything, apparently, from what he went through with Bret Hart. Once again, he screwed over a guy with integrity and, respect for the company, respect for the owner. The only time he ever gave a problem, really, was with this decision. And which goes to show you, for everything Bret did, he really, everything just came undone for him in a matter of a night. Everything with that relationship with him and Vince they built up for years came undone in a night, and it didn't take, it didn't take just a year or whatever to get over that. It took 9 years for them to actually get back together and make things right.
Yeah.
But it's weird how Vince, one of the smartest businessmen in the world, goes and does this to one of his most loyal employees, a guy that didn't want to leave, but with Medusa, the championship was the female championship, the women's championship, a title that wasn't being defended anyway, was taken over to the competition, WCW Nitro, and thrown into the trash, and then...
So do you guys think that this would have happened if the Medusa thing didn't happen? Do you think he still would have done what he did?
I think this would have happened regardless, just because look at the situation we are in now with like Roman Reigns. A majority of the crowd doesn't want Roman Reigns, but Vince wants him to be champion, so he's champion. So if Vince wanted his title to stay in the company, it was going to stay in the company.
Right. Minor, what do you think?
I agree. I mean, if Vince wanted that championship to stay in the company, he would have found a way to keep it in the company.
I know, but like I said, it's just I don't know what made Vince think that Brett was going to do that on him. I mean, it was a different time. They were in, a war.
Yeah.
I guess maybe Vince just felt like he couldn't trust anybody. And, the fact that WCW was paying Brett so much money, there is nothing that doesn't, there's nothing that he knew of that didn't say, WCW is going to pay Brett an extra $5 million to walk with the world title. Like, WCW had a whole bunch of money to throw around, and at that point, I mean, they kind of did the same thing to Medusa. They kind of sweetened the pot of her deal by saying, hey, bring this belt over, we're going to chuck it in the trash. And if Bret Hart did that with the WWF title, yeah, that would have been disastrous. I don't know. If I'm Vince, like I said, I think part of it, it's half best for business and half power play. I think if he wants to put his ego aside, he can work out some sort of 1 day or 1 week contract, get it signed by him. So if Bret breaches it, you can sue him for a bunch of money. Have it go the next night to, have him drop it the next night to Shawn or whatever there. I mean, obviously, Vince wanted Shawn to be the guy. For all of Shawn's shortcomings, he was the most talented performer there, especially with Bret leaving. But I think that there was a better way you could have done business, as you guys keep mentioning, than the way he actually did it.
Like I said, he wound up paying Jeff Jarrett a large amount of money to keep the IC Championship from going wherever he was going.
Mm-hmm. I mean, a similar thing happened with the Ultimate Warrior too.
Yeah.
Like this happens,
Right.
It's just for some reason it's probably less these days, but especially back then, contracts were such a thing where it's not like they got a huge legal team involved or whatever. It was more just a signature and a handshake, and everyone was kind of flying by the seat of their pants until they had to, learn not to the hard way. But this has happened a number of times. So, like I said, it could have just it definitely was paranoia. But I think a lot of it was just like, oh, fuck you, you're going to WCW. Well, I'm going to screw you over too.
I mean, you can also look down the line when Mike Awesome was ECW champion. He showed up on television with the ECW championship belt and was doing business there with that championship as a champion. But that's something that WCW like to do. They'd like to get people speaking and saying, look, we're grabbing these guys, and they want to be where we are. They want to be at where the big boys play and whatever else they wanted to say. But I don't know. It's just one of those things where I can see where Vince is coming from. I can see where Bret's coming from. But as far as justification for a guy like Bret Hart, I can't see it where Vince is going to screw him over. Maybe Vince could have offered him a little bit of money. I mean, they weren't doing phenomenal business at the time, but I don't know. I mean, he had him under a 20-year contract and I guess a decent amount of money. But
yeah, no kidding.
I think he could have done something. He could have went out of his way to try to convince Bret Hart, let's drop it tonight. I'll do something for you, whatever. Just there had to be some other way to go about this.
Well, do you think it was just because he was going to WCW? What if he was going somewhere else? Do you think it would have been more concern over the belt going over there? And why can the belt even leave the company itself? Why is that a thing?
Well, go ahead.
Well, I mean, WCW was their biggest competition at that time, so I can see why Vince would get extremely paranoid about that. So if it were an ECW, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only other place he really could have gone was like Japan. I guess, and no, that probably wouldn't have been as big of a concern. But it's it was a thing of really, if you weren't in WWE, and you were a top level performer, you were in WCW. There was really nowhere. It's not like today where you have 100 different promotions you can go to at 5 different levels of size. It was, you were going here or you were going there, and that was it, especially if you're a top level guy. So maybe, like I said, if Brett was just like, I'm gonna go to Mexico for 5 years or something like that, Vince probably isn't as worried about it. WCW definitely showed that they were willing to be underhanded and use dirty tactics to get one over on WWE in the past. So I think that definitely had a lot to do with it. And like I said, I also think the fact that Vince was losing one of his top guys to them kind of got up his ass a little bit.
All right.
Yeah. Put a bug in his ear.
Do you think if Brett would have stayed and they would have worked kind of like a John Cena CM Punk angle, do you think it would have worked back then? Like he won, he kept the belt, and then he actually left, quote unquote, and then went off and did some stuff. You think that would have worked back then?
Again, that would have required him kind of leaving and going to WCW. And boy, if they could have figured out a way to have Vince show up or have Brett show up on WCW one night and then come back to WWE again, like I can almost guarantee you they would have done it, because that would have been just such an incredible thing back then. That would have really been like a huge shot to WCW, but that's just so, I think, so difficult to pull off. Could it have worked? Yeah, but again, this isn't like CM Punk saying that he's going to leave and go to Ring of Honor, because Ring of Honor, in the grand scheme of things, is not a number one direct competitor to WWE. So that's a little bit of a different thing. Like I said, if Brett wanted to leave and go to Japan for a couple weeks until they kind of straighten things out, yeah, they could have done some cool stuff with that. But I just don't think that climate was meant for that at that point.
I just think at this point with Vince McMahon thinking, okay, I got to get this championship off of him, he's probably thinking in the back of his head, I can't have this disastrous action happen again with my main championship. He's probably getting concerned about lawsuits at this point, because at that point it just might be stolen property. He'd probably let it slide with Medusa, but I don't think he would let it slide as easily with the WWE championship, the WWF championship, because that is the centerpiece of that company when you're trying to build a story up and you're trying to make money. At that point, it was a lot more serious than it is today. That guy made money. He made more money than everybody else because he's who they had the attention on. So that was the guy they expected to sell tickets. So I can see something happening where they'd have giant lawsuits going on and try to get something out of this instead of letting it die like they did with Medusa, and it'd be just a PR nightmare for them.
All right, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up by just getting kind of a final word from everybody. Yes or no, Mike Miner, was Vince McMahon right in the Montreal Screwjob? Yes or no? One word. One word.
Oh, you bastard.
One single word. Yes or no? That is not a word. That's you flipping me off.
No.
Okay, Antoine?
Maybe. That's
Okay,
my one word.
I guess
maybe.
that is a word.
I should have said maybe then.
I am going to go with no. So that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Change the Questions. Hope you all enjoyed. Be sure to check out our website, changingtheqs.com. That is changingtheqs.com. If you want to follow us on Twitter, that's the same handle, at changingtheqs. If you want to like us on Facebook, just search for Changing the Questions there. And if you want to send us a good old-fashioned email, you can do so, changingthequestions@gmail.com. Antoine, where can they get a hold of you?
Everything is Sean the Gamer, SHAWN_DA Gamer. On Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, all that good stuff.
All right, and that is going to wrap it up for this episode. Thank you so much for listening. We'll see you again soon. Goodbye.
Later.